TPCSI fans, you want to revolutionize your sports investing habits? Allow me to tell you about WagerWire. WagerWire is an app that helps you become a superior bettor by allowing you to sync all your sports books and track all your bets in one place. See your current action, your betting history, and stats. You could also sign up for sports books and collect bonus offers. Follow them at WagerWire on X, as it's the best account on the platform. Head to App Store or Play Store now and search WagerWire and download the app. Good afternoon, sports fans from all around the globe. I am the host, Jeff Dawson, East Coast Sports Investors, and it's that time of the week for Tea Time Wagers with good friend and colleague, Mr. Brady Kannon. This week at Jack's Place, the Memorial, 1 week before Father's Day weekend and the third major, the U.S. Open. Shout out to our proud sponsor and partnership, WagerWire. If you have not downloaded the app, please head on over to Google Play. Download it. It's free. From there, myself, Zach, Travis, and the rest of that team will take great care of you. I promise. We got some big things planned for the rest of 2024 and beyond. But now, the true star of the show, the one and only Mr. Brady Kannon.
Mr. Dawson, great to be back with you again. And, you know, I've written about this on a couple of different platforms this week. This is a heck of a run of golf we're in right now, right? I mean, we are really kind of in the midst of it. It started roughly a month ago with the Wells Fargo Championship. I love the way the PGA has adjusted this year to have signature events buttoned up or butted up right next to a major championship. You had the Wells Fargo, you roll into the PGA, and that's followed by a couple of classics, Colonial Country Club and the Canadian Open, a couple of the longest running events on tour. Now we go to Jack's Place. I mean, it doesn't get much better than the Memorial, another signature event. Then we get the U.S. Open. And on the backside, we get another signature event, the Travelers at TPC River Highlands. So this is a great run of golf that we're on right now. And, you know, it's interesting. I spoke with a lot of bookmakers, and, you know, when you have these big events, that translates into more handle as well. And I found myself even making a few extra bets this week. So a lot of fun right now in the world of golf.
I'm going to go back to last weekend. I was sitting here Thursday night, and I was upset with myself because I was looking at the leaderboard. There was a name that was a handful of shots back there that you and I talked about, Robert McIntyre. And I don't want to say a guy rounding into form, a name not from the average golfer, well known in the States, let's say, but over across the pond, very well known. Great story. Had an opportunity to jump in Thursday night, and I didn't. And then, of course, has the big round on Friday. And I have to be honest with you, I can't resist. Put the sucker right on me. Sunday morning before tea time, Jeffrey Benson and a few others were kind enough to offer 24 and 25 to 1 on Rory, 7 shots back. And I think DraftKings was at 17 or 18 to 1. And of course, Rory got as low as 5 to 1 on DraftKings.
He came out smoking hot. He was 4 under through the first 6 holes.
And just to get it was well worth the pizza and beer money. Listen, you're going to give me a 25 to 1 and 18 to 1 on Rory. We know about that extra gear in the back. It was a fun Sunday. He couldn't get there. Hats off to Mr. McIntyre. And what a story about his dad on the bag as well.
Yeah, that was really awesome. And, you know, you and I talked about it last week. I tried to land on some, you know, under the radar guys. I skirted the favorites. I didn't land on Rory. Morikawa, I believe, was in the field, if I recall. And I tried to find some diamonds in the rough. And unfortunately, McIntyre wasn't one of them. But, you know, it made sense. I know he took some sharp action. You know, and some of the guys we were on were sharp plays as well. They you know, obviously only one of them works out. But it made sense when I kind of looked at McIntyre a little deeper when I saw he was running hot early on in the tournament. And he came in off of a very nice finish at the Myrtle Beach and then the PGA Championship as well. So his form was pretty darn good leading up to the Canadian Open. But I didn't have faith in him at the halfway point. And especially after Saturday, you know, you remember on Saturday, he came out very pedestrian. And I kind of expected that because the first 2 days, his putter was white hot. And he was very poor on strokes gained approach. I mean, this field was down after the cut. This field was down to like 69 players. And on strokes gained approach, he was like 62nd. And he wasn't hitting greens in regulation. I mean, his game was off, but his putter was absolutely on fire. And sure enough, on Saturday, he was kind of, stumbling and it was kind of holding true to the pattern I expected. And then all of a sudden at the 14th hole, he goes berserk again. And he goes birdie, 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 eagle. And you're like, oh my gosh. And then he starts out Sunday with a 4-shot lead. And still I'm going, this is impossible. This guy's putter is so hot right now. As it turns out, he ended up gaining over 11 and a half shots on the field just with his putter over the course of the 4 days. He really did win this tournament with the putter. The ball striking became much better on Sunday, and thank goodness it did, because he might not have been able to get it done if it had not worked out in that way for McIntyre on Sunday. Because again, like I say, the ball striking was a little bit erratic and all over the place. The putter was carrying him. The putter actually came back to the pack a little bit on Sunday, but the ball striking picked up. And you saw that 7-iron he hit into the final hole. That was wonderful. That wrapped up the golf tournament for him right there. So, yeah, it's hard not to root for the story, and his dad and everything was very cool. So, hey, here's another guy that has his first PGA Tour victory. And, you and I, Jeff, have known for a little while. This guy's the real deal. He kind of returned the favor for your boy Rory, who caught him and passed him at the Genesis Scottish Open last year. McIntyre, our friend Matt Humans, had a ticket on McIntyre at 100-1 to win that. And he was all set to do so. And then all of a sudden, Rory comes out of nowhere on Sunday, hits a couple of the finest golf shots of his entire career, beats McIntyre, wins the Scottish Open. McIntyre returns the favor a little bit and able to hold Rory at bay at the Canadian Open. So turnabout is fair play.
Well, I'm hoping Matt at least had a little something on him for a little I rejoice a little get back, because I remember that very, very well at that Scottish Open. I remember Matt on TV talking about that, and I was sweating for him,
He was smarting from that one a little bit. I remember he and I spoke on the phone. He was a little ticked off.
Jack's Place, my dad's all-time favorite golfer. Mr. Nicklaus, before, of course, Tiger Woods came along. We talk endlessly. Tournaments before and after a major. And you and I and Noah talked backstage a little about, some of these golfers want to get in and work on some shots for next week, whether they're here for the 36 holes and get a head start or focusing in, to win this tournament. And all the horses are here. Scotty, a huge, huge favorite. You can get some decent prices on Rory, Xander, Morikawa. The list is endless. Thoughts on, as you're putting the data and the numbers, does that in the back of your mind come to play that, hey, we got a major next week as well here?
Yeah, it did a little bit. There's a couple of guys that I've seen a lot of activity on this week. One I think is more, general public, and one I think is a little bit sharper. That's Colin Morikawa and then Tommy Fleetwood. And I actually have wagers on both Morikawa and Fleetwood for next week for the U.S. Open. And, to your question there, I kind of felt like it was maybe 1 week too early for Fleetwood. I know some very well-respected people on Fleetwood this week because he had a pretty good Canadian Open. He shot a really low round on Saturday. I believe it was 64. And then he kind of fell over himself on Sunday. But these guys went right back to him. I'm going to give him one more week. And I think Tommy could be one of those guys. Now, Tommy wants, more than anything to win on the PGA Tour, but he'd probably take a major championship over that, I'm sure. He's been an extremely good U.S. Open player. I think you could argue it's been his best major. You could also make a case that the British Open has been his best major. One of those two for sure. He finished third this year at the Masters. He really hasn't been able to crack that puzzle in the past, but obviously with a tremendous performance there this year, that says a lot about his major championship form, his current form. Has a good week in Canada. You have a major that has arguably been his best, the U.S. Open, coming up. And oh, by the way, this particular venue, Pinehurst number 2, is very Links's style. I don't want to call it a British Open, but it's similar where, you know, the links and the sand and the terrain and the way it's been kind of shaped by the wind and the environment, like a links design is. It's not seaside, obviously, but I think there's some British Open element to Pinehurst. And hey, if I've got a guy in Tommy Fleetwood who not only does really well at US Opens, but also does well at the British Open, and you've got a course that is a little bit of a combination of the two, I like that situation. As far as the timing, he's a guy I think maybe might be more about next week. And I kind of think the same with Morikawa. He's been running so hot. It's not a surprise that a lot of people are jumping on him here, but he may be more focused on next week. I know he's won at this golf course before. He's the best on tour, he and Patrick Cantlay, as far as number of wins on Jack Nicklaus designs. So there's a lot of things that make sense about Morikawa. Rory is a guy that always seems to play well the week before a major. You know, he did it before the Masters at the Texas Valero Open. I can't remember. Oh, the week before the PGA, he wins at Quail Hollow. You know, I think there's also something to the fact that guys come in maybe a little bit more relaxed. They're like, okay, let's work on some things. And they're not so locked in on, I got to play well and whatever. And maybe that frees them up a little bit. And next thing you know, they shot a 65 and they're right in the middle of this thing. And so I think there's that. Also, this golf course, you know, when Nicklaus designed it, he named it after Muirfield in Scotland, his favorite British Open golf course, where he won in 1966. And then he also took a lot of inspiration from Augusta National, you know, obviously winning there 6 times. The 12th hole at both Augusta and here at the Memorial is almost an identical par 3. And we've seen a lot of crossover success with not only Masters winners, but maybe more so with US Open winners. I think this course may be a little bit more of a US Open indicator than it is a Masters indicator. So the other thing I'm getting to here is, you know, guys can use this to prepare for next week too. So, you know, there's a lot of different mindsets here. Are guys focused on next week? Are guys taking it easy this week? They want to work on some things, or are they using this as kind of a perfect prep? That's for us amateur psychologists to figure out.
Before we get into the outrights and, of course, the course makeup itself, Viktor Hovland, defending champ, was reading some quotes, some tweets, whatever we want to call them today, going back or switching up swing coaches. Any word what you're thinking on that move for Viktor?
Well, he's with the guy, his old guy that he switched back to. Yeah. And then all of a sudden we saw him flash at the PGA Championship when he was with his old instructor. Yeah, I mean, put it this way. I think we're starting to figure out that Viktor Hovland is an excellent PGA Championship player. He was a runner-up last year in the final pairing with Brooks Koepka, and he was right there at the very end. This year was Xander Schauffele, and I think that very much suits his game. Total driving, big hitter, you know, ball striker. So I wouldn't be surprised to see Viktor Hovland continue to play well in PGA Championships and probably win one of these days. But yeah, obviously the form looks pretty darn good, and he's the defending champ here. Oh, by the way. You know, I'm not sold yet. I mean, if he comes out this week and plays really well again, then it's like, okay, maybe this guy's completely back, because this is not an easy golf course by any means. This is really like a major in itself. You have to do everything well here. In my handicap, I mean, there really was no stone left unturned. You got to scramble. You got to ball strike. You got to hit it off the tee. You know, about the only thing you probably don't need in spades is driving accuracy. It's very much a positional golf course because you have to set up your second shot. We know Mr. Nicklaus, He wants to set up a second shot golf course with great iron play, and that is every bit of the part here at the Memorial. But the fairways are pretty wide. So, but everything else, bogey avoidance, distance off the tee. I honed in on 3 particular areas, though, that I think are most important. And that's strokes gained approach, the iron play, and you're going to have some long iron play as well. Most of the approach shots are going to come from 175 yards and beyond. So approach play, long iron play, and then par 4 scoring, strokes gained on the par 4s that measure 450 to 500 yards, which the majority of them do here. That's proven to be a very key area where you can gain on the field here at this particular tournament. And then finally, scrambling. These are pretty small greens. They're smaller than tour average. They're lightning quick, undulated, bent grass surfaces. And you're going to miss some in regulation on occasion. And you've got some thick rough and some tough scrambling situations around these greens. So the guys that do that the best are also going to set themselves apart. So approach, par 4s, and scrambling was really where I kind of honed in my emphasis this week, in and around all of the other things that you have to do well. Again, for a golf course that really demands very similar asks of a major championship.
Well, the stage, the fairway, the first tee is all yours for your outrights. How's that, sir?
All right. Well, I kind of went over the breakdown of the handicap here. It's a big boy golf course, a big boy golf tournament, one of the best non-majors of the year in and year out. It's nearly 7,600 yards is this course, a par 72. I mentioned the very generous fairways. Really penal, thick rough. They're pretty wide, but boy, you don't want to find that rough. It's pretty nasty, and they have had a little bit of rain in the area as well, and that makes that rough even more difficult. Nicholas owns and designed this golf course in 1974. They first played the Memorial in 1976. I mentioned that I stayed away from the shortest shots on the board. The shortest shot I did take was Russell Henley. He was 16th here last year. I got Henley at 40 to 1. He was 50 to 1 for a minute early in the week, and I missed that, but I'm okay with 40. I think that's a fair price. I think that's probably about exactly what his price should be. If you can find anything better than that, then more power to you. I talked about, the par 4s, the scrambling, and the strokes gained approach. He's maybe one of the other than Scotty Scheffler, Henley's right there, top 5 in this field for those 3 areas combined. Then I went with Alex Noren. Once again, I think I've been on this guy 3 or 4 or 5 times this year. Obviously, he doesn't have a win, but we've made some money with him in head-to-head matchups. And prior to last week, where he missed the cut in Canada, he had 8 straight top 25 finishes. And you'll find some polls out there. His official world golf ranking is like 56th or something. But you'll find some more accurate polls, in my estimation, when you don't have the live players in the OWGR. You really can't say it's completely accurate anymore. But some other polls out there have Alex Noren as a top 20 player in the world. And I'm not necessarily arguing that. He's another guy, a fantastic short game. He's number 1 on the PGA Tour in scrambling. Great on approach. I think he's number 2 on the tour in bogey avoidance. He doesn't make a lot of mistakes. He putts well. He's got the short game, and he's pretty proficient off the tee as well. We'll see if he can at least pop another top 20 finish for us. But I'd love to see the guy get to the winner's circle for his first PGA Tour victory. A lot of people don't realize he's won all around the world 11 times. So it's not like he's new to winning. He just hasn't done it on the PGA Tour. And then Keegan Bradley, we talked about him before the show, that he's been kind of a hot name that's popping up. And what I like about that, not such a hot name like Colin Morikawa, where the whole world's backing him. Just some kind of sharper circles are mentioning the name Keegan Bradley. He just finished runner-up a couple weeks ago at the Colonial. He had a top 20 finish at the PGA Championship. The form seems to be really good right now. He's also got a very high ball flight, which also, by the way, so does Jason Day have in his arsenal. Jason Day is a member at this course, and maybe he chose it because this is a course where it's good to have that high ball flight. These small greens, a high ball flight is much more likely to hold the green rather than a lower hot shot coming out there and finding its way into that thick rough. So a high ball flight, dropping it in soft here can be beneficial. And that's a skill set that Bradley certainly has. Got him at 60-1, which is a nice number. Noren at 60-1 as well, if I didn't mention that. And then another guy at 60-1 that I've seen some buzz on this week is Sam Burns. You know, he missed the cut at the PGA Championship, but prior to that, he was 13th at the Wells Fargo and then came back with a 10th place finish last week in Canada. So this guy's form from what we saw early in the year when he was red hot might be on the return here. He went cold for a month or so there, but he could be shaping up into form once again. He also was 16th here last year. And then Shane Lowry at 70-1. You know, Lowry often seems like kind of the pick du jour. But I land on him often, I should say, but it's typically at the big boy events, tough golf courses. I think he's a player that plays difficult golf courses very well. Look what he's done at another Nicklaus design, you know, what used to be the Honda Classic at PGA National there. He's been very good on that Nicklaus track, has a runner-up finish there, a number of top 10s there, and that is a very difficult golf course. He plays the Florida swing very well, Bay Hill, you know, another big boy track that's very difficult. And in 2015, I think it was his first PGA Tour victory, he won at Firestone Country Club, the old World Series of Golf, the WGC Bridgestone, which was a loaded field back in the day. And Shane Lowry won there in Akron, Ohio. Now we're in Dublin, Ohio. So, you know, it's another signature event, if you will, in the same state, in those same type of conditions, at a golf course that demands a lot of the same skill sets. So I think there's a little bit of a tie there. This guy has finished very well in the past with a couple of top 15 finishes and a top 10 right here at the Memorial as well. So I think Lowry could fire this week. He's got all the stats that make sense as well. And he's had an awful year putting. So that's really all we're going to ask of him this week. He does everything else brilliantly. Let's see if he can find a hot putter this week. And then a couple of longer bombs. Tom Hoge at 92-1, who I've seen creep up to as high as 100-1. He's just a tremendous ball striker and a pretty darn good scrambler as well. The putting could, you know, he's another guy like Lowry where the putting, we could use a hot week with the putter from Hoge. But I mean, after Scheffler, he's arguably the best ball striker in this field. You know, he's another guy that we'll get to in a minute. I played for first round leader. Hoge always seems to have that one, you know, 64, 63, 65 kind of outlier round over the course of 4 days as well. So I took a splash with him at first round leader too. And then my longest bomb at 125-1, Kurt Kitayama, who like Keegan Bradley also has a very high ball flight, does everything well. Once again, the par fours, the work off the tee, the approach play, the scrambling, he checks those boxes. So I took a stab in a triple-digit bomb there with Kitayama as well.
A lot of meat on the bones here. When you were talking about Lowry a few weeks ago, he was one at the PGA that I did not have any, you know, pieces. And he was that one. He had that great Saturday. If
another Nicklaus course, right?
Yes. And I was like, oh, the one guy that I know is one big time that if he gets the blade hot, and he did, I'm like sweating bullets. Thank God Sunday he kind of came back down. But I love where your eyes are there.
Yeah. I didn't have Lowry, and he scared the heck out of me at the PGA as well. You have to pick your spots with him. He's a supremely talented player. And I think the spots generally are Florida, the Florida swing, maybe the Nicklaus course connection, and tough big boy tests. He usually shows up when the golf gets tougher. So does Shane Lowry.
I see we have some head-to-head matchups this week.
Yeah, just one I landed on, but I really like the play, and I don't know if this number is still out there. I found this at BetMGM, which does not necessarily have the universal menu of matchups. So you might have to dig a little bit to find this one. But that's Tommy Fleetwood at even money, plus 100 to beat Justin Thomas. Justin Thomas has played extremely well at this golf course, Muirfield Village, in the past, lost in a playoff to Colin Morikawa when we had back-to-back weeks at this track. We had like the workday deal, and then we had the Memorial following it. It was 2 consecutive weeks at Jack's Place. And in that week prior to the Memorial, Morikawa won in a playoff over JT. He's got a good history here. We know the form has been topsy-turvy for Thomas this year, and he showed up pretty well at the PGA Championship. Obviously, I think that's his best major. He's won it twice. I don't think we've seen him since. So I'm not sure what to say about his form. It's not necessarily a bet against Justin Thomas in this spot, but I think at a real nice price, I think I have the guy who is bound to flash better this week in Tommy Fleetwood. I think we talked about it a moment ago. I think next week could be the week that Fleetwood wins outright. I think he's going to play well this week as well. And so, you know, as an underdog there to Thomas, I gladly jumped on that one.
Good friend, Mr. Brian Gaskell, showing up here. And Brian, I hope you took that one with Mr. Fleetwood. He's a big fan of Mr. Fleetwood. So make sure you get yourself some Fleetwood action for next week as well. You'd hate to have him finally crack and win the major and not have a piece of that one as well. So I see potentially some first round leaders this week.
Yeah, I mentioned the play on Tom Hoge. You know, when I handicap, and first round leader, as you know, Jeff, is something I rarely do. We did play Xander. The last one I did, I think I think I did some for the Masters. You know, the fan in me gets caught up in these big events, and let's throw some pizza money on a first round leader, see if we hit one. And it worked out at the PGA when Xander shot 62 to get things started. So, you know, we've got another big boy event here. I said, what the heck? One of my friends asked me, says, who you on for first round leader this week? And I said, oh, well, let me handicap it and figure it out. So when I look at first round leader, I like to look at birdies. You got to make a lot of birdie percentage. Who leads the tour in birdie percentage? I like to look at that. I like to look at bogey avoidance. You don't want to make a lot of bogeys if you're going to be the first round leader. And then the 2 areas of skill sets where a first round leader typically gets to that point is strokes gained approach and putting. And I'm sure that's kind of easy to assume. If you're striping the irons all day and the putter's red hot, there's a good chance you're going to be first round leader, right? So the way, if you see the stats of how first round leaders perform, almost every one of them is high, if not leading the field in strokes gained approach and putting for that particular day. So I like to look at a guy that's has good approach play, good putter, makes a lot of birdies, makes very few bogeys, and then has a history of good first round scoring average. Tom Hoage's one of those guys, and I got him at 66-1. I also went with Sam Burns. These are all guys I landed on for outrights, by the way, which I think is correlated there a little bit. You know, if you're going to win the thing, why not get off to a hot start? And this is not necessarily a catch-up golf course. That is another similarity to Augusta National. Guys don't typically come from the back of the pack at the Masters. You see who that top 10 on the leaderboard is after day one. That's usually where you find your winner. Similar here at the Memorial. So if you're going to win, it's going to take a hot start. Sam Burns at 33, Tom Hoge at 66, Russell Henley at 33-1, and then Alex Noren at 45-1.
Well, I definitely, again, it makes so much sense. It's funny when I go in and I figure out where I am sitting for the outrights, and then I do the same thing. It's a good week to dabble into the first round leaders. I either do what you just did. Hey, if we're going to win the tournament, we better have a damn good first round. Or what I will do is like your plays this week. Well, I don't have any of the top iron in the field this week. Therefore, I'm not playing Scotty Scheffler at 4-1, but you might get him at a 15-1 or something like that for the first round leader with the Rory, with the Xander, and correlate it that way. Hey, I don't have the big boys to win this damn thing, but maybe one of them would pop as the first round leader.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's a good way to extract a little more value, out of one of those big names. Let's see if we can just catch them for one day. No, I think that absolutely makes sense there. Also, for first round leader, you've got, and I'm trying to grab my train of thought here when you were talking about handicapping that field. And I've lost it here. I'll come back to it. If we get there. But just a lot of thoughts swirling in my mind here. You've got me excited for these big boy golf tournaments. So if it comes back to me, I'll jump on it for you.
All right. And lastly, there's the Liv boys playing this week.
Yes, and again, a week before a major. I like how the Liv has done this scheduling. We had, Liv Miami before the Masters. We had, I think it was Singapore before the PGA, and now we have Liv Houston prior to the U.S. Open. This is a golf course we've seen for many years on the PGA Tour, not anymore. It's called the Golf Club of Houston, and it used to be Redstone Golf Club. And for many years, it was always the lead up to the Masters. And they used to set the golf course up quite a bit like Augusta National, kind of like the Memorial being a tune-up for the U.S. Open. They used to intentionally set up Redstone to kind of mimic Augusta and get these guys in that Masters mode. And it's also kind of a carrot to dangle for these guys to enter the tournament because, hey, we're going to give you a good practice round, if you will, at a course that we hope is going to be similar to Augusta. Other similar layouts that I think to the Golf Club of Houston are Bay Hill, Southern Hills, where they had the 2022 PGA Championship, Doral in Miami, and then TPC Scottsdale. Only 54 guys, and that's what I was going to say. Now I remember it, Jeff. You talk about, hey, maybe I'll dabble in the first round leader this week. It does kind of make sense too, because there's only 73 guys in the field. So that's half of what we're used to dealing with. You should, by the numbers, have a better chance of landing on one. So here with the Liv, same philosophy. There's only 54 guys in the field. I tried 4 of them for an outright win. We'll see if we can pop one. Tyrrell Hatton at 12-1. We know this guy is still one of the best players in the world. He's got a win at Bay Hill along with multiple top 10 finishes, was 13th at Southern Hills at that PGA in 2022, top 5 at Doral Miami, and he was 4th last year at TPC Scottsdale. Then I went to Taylor Gooch at 16-1. He was 4th here back in 2019 when they played the Houston Open on the PGA Tour. He finished 4th here at this golf course. He was top 10 at Doral Miami, 7th at Bay Hill in 2022. And then look at some of his stats on the Liv circuit. 2nd in scrambling, 5th in birdies, 4th in driving accuracy, and 5th in putting. Pretty darn good. Carlos Ortiz, 35-1. Also finished 4th here on the PGA Tour in 2019 at this same golf course. 9th on the Liv circuit in birdies, 11th in greens and regulation, and also has a 4th place finish at TPC Scottsdale in 2021. And then Brendan Steele at 60-1. Always been a great driver of the golf ball for many years on the PGA Tour, hits it long and straight. One of the best guys traditionally for total driving, and we've already seen him rack up a win on the Liv circuit this year in Australia. Also 4 in his career on the PGA Tour, 4 top 10 finishes at TPC Scottsdale. So a 4-pack there for the Liv Houston, which gets started on Friday.
Well, we got a lot here today. Obviously, the outrights and the top 20s. And then we had one head-to-head, first round leaders, and the cherry on top, of course, the Liv in Houston. Next week, U.S. Open, Father's Day weekend, Pinehurst too. I'm going to close with this. There's been some tweets and some pictures out there of Tiger already out there getting some work. Going to be a tough task. I don't know, like the Masters, if it's one of these, hey, let's make the cut and then just see how the body takes it. We got a week to talk about Tiger. Thoughts about Tiger? And again, if you were looking for the memories or whatever, would it be to make the cut or not? Or, I mean, probably zero chance of actually winning the U.S. Open next week.
One thing I have begun my U.S. Open research, really kind of dove in. I've already made a few plays, but really kind of dove into the golf course a little bit yesterday. And I didn't realize, but this is an absolute beast of a golf course. I want to say it's 7,500 yards or something like that. I think it's like 75. I mean, it's almost as long as what we have here, Muirfield Village this week. Okay. But the difference, Muirfield Village, a par 72, Pinehurst number 2, a par 70. So this thing is big boy long and you're getting 2 less strokes. That I don't think bodes well for Tiger Woods, much let alone anybody in this field. I mean, that's a lot of golf course to bite off and try and chew up and defeat. I've got to dive into this more, but I believe, traditional U.S. Open, it's going to be about total driving. The U.S. Open used to be so much about hitting fairways and greens. Now these things have gotten so big. The game has gotten so big and long, and these guys hit it so far. That's, I think, part of the reason that you have this beast of a golf course. And that's not to say some shorter guys aren't going to get it done. We have seen here in 2014 in the past, Martin Keimer won it going away, and he is not necessarily a bomber. Also on that leaderboard, I believe Henrik Stenson was up there, Jim Furyk. Some of these guys, these shorter hitters, have fared well as well. But I think you're probably, in terms of Tiger, the length might be a little bit too much for him to handle.
I was thinking the same thing. And I forgot to ask you, and I didn't look, I didn't see it. Our good friend and colleague, Mr. Jeff Sherman, did he put out his under-over for this weekend?
Yeah. I'm trying to think. It was 267. Does that make sense? No, that doesn't make sense. It was, I want to say it was right around, it was double digits, I believe. I can look it up for you if you want. But I want to say the winning score, the prediction was around 12 under par, if I recall. Let me see if I can find it here for you. It was definitely, a lower number because we're aware of how difficult this track is. 275.5, and I think that's come down. So it was probably 276.5. 4 days, of even par is 288. So that's, 13.5 under par. What is that? So it's like 12.5 under par. Yeah. So we're right there.
It was funny. I think it was at the halfway point. I sent Jeff a tweet and I was like, hey, by the way, I missed, what was your under over for this PGA? Because there were people out there saying someone could win with 20. Whatever he put, he goes, yeah, I whiffed on this by a mile. He said.
Yeah, you'd be surprised. He's pretty darn good at it. He's one of the best golf odds makers in the world. Jeff Sherman over there at the Westgate Superbook. But yeah, so 12.5 under par, the number you want, if you think they're going to go lower or higher than that. I wouldn't be surprised if it was less than that, like single digits, but there has been it's a trend that we've seen here for 3 or 4 weeks in a row now, a little bit of rain going into the beginning of the golf tournament. But I think it's been less here in the Dublin, Ohio area than what we saw at, say, Valhalla or Colonial or even Canada. So I don't necessarily think we're going to get a completely soft golf course where these guys can really throw darts and make a lot of birdies.
Well, I can't wait, obviously, for this weekend. A lot to get into. My few of my shops, I should say, for this week at the Memorial, and of course some outrights, some top 20s, some first round leaders, and even sprinkle in some live action there. Next week, the U.S. Open. We know we can go over to Twitter at Las Vegas Golfer to find all your work. But as we always finish here, the stage is yours to tell them where else they can find your written work. And, of course, the times to go follow you and watch you on TV on the Sports Grid.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. My article came out on Tuesday, every Tuesday for golf.com, just the outrights there. And as you mentioned, we also play those for a top 20 finish. I talked about getting the nice prices on some of the other best golfers in the world this week because you have such a loaded field. Not one of my guys was not a plus price for a top 20 finish, which is pretty surprising. I mean, you've only got 73 guys in this field. So a top 20 finish is obviously more feasible than in a typical golf tournament. And yet all 7 of my outrights this week were still plus price to finish top 20. So that was pretty cool to find. That article again at golf.com. And then I should have an article coming up here pretty soon, which I thought was a really good piece. Spoke with all kinds of bookmakers and professional bettors up at Golf Bet at PGAtour.com, the prop farm. That comes out every Wednesday afternoon. That should be up shortly. And then on the grid, coming up here at 4:30 Pacific, 7:30 p.m. Eastern time. And then again at 10 p.m. Eastern time, some final thoughts here before they tee it up on Thursday. And again, you can get all these updates on my Twitter page at Las Vegas Golfer.
Well, we can't wait. We want to thank you as always. Wednesdays, obviously, smiling ear to ear, my favorite time of the week to talk golf with you. I'll be watching, obviously, at 7:30 and 10 o'clock tonight on the grid. So shout out to Noah Frank, who absolutely crushed it again back here. We can't thank you enough. So for myself, Jeff Dawson at EC Sports Investor, the one and only Brady Kannon at Las Vegas Golf. We wish everyone a great evening. Enjoy yourself. Let's cash some tickets in golf, and we will see you soon.